Hello, today is the 1st of December 2022, and this is episode, I think, 34? Yes, episode 34, a weekly notice. Thanks so much for joining me this week. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving last week if you were in the United States. Um, I appreciated the time off. It was very nice to step back from the work a bit. You may recall 2 weeks ago was the episode right after the criminal trial where I was a witness in Portland, Oregon, and I in the last episode talked about how difficult of a process that had been. The defendant in that case, the Antifa assailant, was found not guilty of felony robbery by the judge, though the judge in his closing statements did say that I was blameless that day and victimless, but nevertheless, he didn't find that the charge fit what had been done. So today is a very packed show, so I'm gonna keep an eye on the comments throughout the show, but I probably, in the interest of time, won't dedicate the last block to like Q&A because I just want to get the news straight to you guys. Um, so I'm gonna start off by, well, actually mentioning one thing because I often forget. You know, people often ask me, um, how can I support you? How can I find out about your journalism? I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on this or that. Great questions. Very simple answer. Just go to andy-ngo.com and you can see from there, you can find out about my book, obviously, Unmasked, and you can see the articles that I've written with links to them, videos to some of my recent interviews and other live stream episodes. And there's a section donate there where you can see links to my locals, Patreon, Subscribe Star, there's my Cash App and Venmo, and you can also give directly on there through the Stripe processor. So this work that I'm doing, this ad-free show, is possible really only with your support. So if you can, please do. Okay, so uh, the World Cup is going on right now, and I'm not a sports fan, as you can probably all guess. Based on things I tweet about. I don't know anything about sports, didn't grow up playing it, had no interest. In fact, I was bullied a lot as a boy because I was so bad at sports. I still remember in when I was like 6, 7, 8, 9, um, during the physical education classes where students would take turns picking which sides they wanted for their teams. I was often the last one because I was so athletically challenged, if you will. But anyways, the main reason why I mentioned the World Cup is that um, what would Antifa be if they did not see another opportunity to somehow pigeonhole in their political agenda and to carry out violence and to threaten violence and to encourage violence? That's exactly what happened recently at the North American headquarters of Adidas, which unfortunately for them is in Portland, Oregon. And it was completely smashed up. No arrests were made. And the claim of the responsibility was put on this anarchist Antifa website called Abolition Media. So I did an interview about this for Newsmax. I'm going to play the clip. Um, what's significant about it is it's not just another one of those random um, window smashing events that Antifa do. They do that all the time and have been doing it for years. They release a claim of responsibility through Revolution Media and called for a whole month long of attacks. They list a number of grievances. They say that the World Cup is benefits from is standing on the bodies of people because of capitalism. So they cite a grievance that many have pointed out about how many migrant workers have died in Qatar building those various stadiums. But also, um, the manifesto goes on to list that really it's just about how capitalism causes people to die, and therefore we need to go after all these corporate sponsors of the World Cup. And yeah, so I'll play you the interview. Um, Here we go.
Andy, you have been reporting some pretty alarming updates about Antifa's plans as of late. I know they're now claiming a month-long string of violent attacks. Can you explain further what's going on here?
Yeah, so about 48 hours ago, the North American headquarters of Adidas in Portland, Oregon, was smashed up. The attack was a little bit shocking in that this is a facility that you think would be highly secure, given that it's such a large corporation. But multiple windows were smashed, and there was a lot of vandalism. Nobody was arrested. According to the Portland police, there were 9 people who were wearing dark clothing and masks carrying out the attack. Now, there's an anti-anarchist website that has put out a claim of responsibility. The website's called Abolition Media. And in it, the attack is said to be retribution for the World Cup's involvement with capitalism. And it cites Qatar's human rights record, but mostly the main grievance is that the World Cup is a way for capitalism to spread around the world. And so the group that published a clean responsibility also then calls for a whole month long of attacks on other corporate sponsors of the World Cup. The irony, though, is that many of these sponsors that are now being targets of Antifa were the same ones who donated tens and tens of millions of dollars to the adjacent far left movement BLM back in 2020.
Andy, I want to ask you about something because I know that you receive a ton of threats, and I'd like to get your response to the left's response to the tragic shooting in Colorado that we saw over the weekend. They're, of course, blaming the MAGA movement for this horrific event. And clearly this hatred comes from all sides of the political aisle. Isn't that right?
Yes, I think the blame that they do is going to be there whether or not there is evidence. And so far, law enforcement has not indicated anything of an ideological motive. That remains to be seen. I'm not saying that there isn't an ideological component, but whenever, for example, there have been attacks carried out by so-called protected categories, the left is very, very quick to condemn anybody who dares to draw an ideological link. And sometimes it's a link that exists to the explicit rhetoric of left-wing politicians and left-wing activists. For example, when law enforcement officers are killed by Black nationalist BLM militants. Yeah, so and also one thing about the sponsors of the World Cup that are being listed as targets in the um, by Antifa is that a lot of them was ones who, and I mentioned this a second ago, donated to BLM, and that's pretty significant. So obviously there's a lot of people who don't have sympathy that for these corporations who are now experiencing um, what they helped enabled a couple of years ago. Nonetheless, I think that's not really the lesson to draw from this. Um, my point in bringing attention to this is that Antifa, though they are not doing the nightly rioting that we saw 2 years ago, they are still doing these sort of small scale attacks and claiming responsibility on social media. I mean, the uh, was it abolition media um, is on Twitter, for example, which is going to lead now to my the big thing that's been on the news a lot, mentioning my name is that let me pull it up. Well, okay. some background first. So Elon Musk recently responded to this account on Twitter saying that Twitter would take action removing pedophilic content. And in response, um, and the person he was responding to was mentioning also that with the removal of pedophilic content, that would mean a lot of Antifa accounts are going to be taken off. In the responses to that, I responded to Elon and said that, hey, I don't know if you're aware, but there, for a number of years, there have been a whole thousands of far left violent extremist accounts who have used Twitter explicitly to radicalize, organize, recruit, and fundraise money for violent extremist causes. Um, if you all go back last year, you remember the response that, for example, Parler was blamed for the 6th of January because people had posted on Parler about videos and calling for people to go to the pro-Trump rally, which later devolved into a riot. Now, nobody ever held Twitter to account for the much more deadly 2020 riots. By my last count, um, I'm pretty sure the final number was 26 people who had died in the course of these so-called peaceful protests in 2020. And a lot of those riots, majority of them, were either partially planned on Twitter or fully planned on Twitter or promoted. And so, what I was hoping to bring to Elon's attention is like Twitter is a really key ecosystem to Antifa's whole organizing apparatus. When I was um, undercover on the ground doing field reporting, field observations, I heard with my own ears them saying, this is a quote, mutual aid cannot happen without Twitter. Mutual aid, when they say it, it's referring to their ability to fundraise money for their causes. So I'm going to pull up my various Twitter exchanges with Elon, so you can all see how this played out and the fallout from that, and the reaction from the left, of course. Okay, so let me go a little bigger. So this account, Ramsey Paul, was writing, Twitter is reportedly nuking pedo accounts. This is eliminating much of Antifa Twitter. Elon responded, removing child exploitation is priority number one. Please reply in comments if you see anything that Twitter needs to address. Now here's where I wrote, a large number of Antifa accounts operate on Twitter to promote riots, give tips on how to commit violent crimes, and post names, photos, and addresses of targets plus their family members. And I was really shocked that he actually responded. Incitement to violence will result in account suspension. So this was on the 25th of November. Then I took the opportunity to follow up. I asked, well, how do we best inform Twitter of these violations? I'm reporting on specific accounts for years and pretty much all of them remain. And then I talked about how last year in May of 2021, Twitter was used to organize a mob to go after me after I had already been beaten and ran into a hotel in downtown Portland and was in the lobby, and people live streaming videos and telling their comrades where to go, and then of course issuing the death threats. So I linked to the New York Post piece that I wrote. Antifa almost killed me, but I won't stop reporting their crimes. You can Google that and read it in this video. Take a look if you haven't seen it yet. Elon responded, that is a disturbing story and very concerning that Twitter took no action despite clear violation of terms of service. Report in this thread for now. So I thank him for that. And then the first thing that I brought attention to was an account called Crime Think, which has been suspended now. Let me close up. Crime Think. So Crime Think is a far left violent extremist Antifa collective, and they had an account on Twitter, but they run their own website. And but I'm gonna post some of the receipts I had on what they posted on Twitter. So um, the text is kind of small. I can summarize this. So during the 2020 riots, for example, they linked to um, uh, what they said, a demonstrator's guides to helmets, gas masks, and goggles, tools and tactics in the Portland protests. So they wrote up this after action report on what made these, quote, direct actions, which were violent attacks on federal property, private property, businesses, and people, so successful. They talked about how you can organize in these various types of brigades, laser groups, um, recognizance. I write about all of this in my book, by the way, but Crime Think was specifically posting this stuff on Twitter. Let me go back to it here. And then, look, they wrote, this is the third precinct in Minneapolis today. So they posted a picture of the ruins of the police station in Minneapolis that was completely burnt to the ground. When we say abolish the police, we don't mean beg politicians to defund them. Quote, we mean take grassroots action to prevent them from continuing to do harm until flowers grow in the wreckage of the system. So that's an incitement to violence. Here, they wrote rest in power, Willem van Sponsen, and they posted this picture of their members praising Willem. So Willem van Spronsen is the Antifa member and John Brown Gun Club member in Washington State who in 2019 carried out a domestic terrorist attack on the local ICE facility in Tacoma, Washington. He brought a rifle and homemade explosives and made a car explode and was trying to make a 500-gallon propane tank that was attached to the building explode. He was killed by police in the process. He had already written and sent out a manifesto. Another question that nobody asks is why those comrades who received those manifestos didn't alert law enforcement beforehand. I think we know why. Anyways, Crime Think was praising him, and then Crime Think, crucially, they're known for making the texts and propaganda that Antifa use at their book fairs and their social events where they radicalize and recruit people. So these texts are made as printouts. One is called "Why We Break Windows." So in a way, they're kind of similar to how Muslim Brotherhood recruiting and organizing are these tracts, these little booklets that are cheap, easy to print out, and you just give out, and it distills really militant extremist ideas in ways that are easy for anybody to pick up and read and just follow. I constantly bring up the comparison between jihadism and Antifa, not because their ideologies are similar, but because a lot of the general recruiting and radicalizing tactics are actually really the same. And I guess you can see that in a lot of violent extremist radical movements and groups. But I think just with the use of text, by text, I'm talking about these printouts, these booklets and pamphlets, is really key in sort of maintaining a certain ideological radicalism, conformity within the movement. And Crime Think was the main one that made them and distributed them as well. So they've been banned. Um, and also, they I also brought attention to how, so last year, one of their just printing distribution centers was in Washington State, was burnt in a fire. So they raised tens of thousands of dollars on GoFundMe. I brought attention to it at the time, but the campaign wasn't shut down, even though GoFundMe says they don't allow fundraising for extremist causes. The guy who's fundraising is Shane Becker. That's this person here. And he wrote, when the revolution starts, first order of business to open all the prisons and free all the prisoners. Belay that, free all the prisoners, then burn down all the prisons. So he's calling for arson attacks. In here, he's talking about using human body shields at riots as well. A sea of bodies opposed to the fascists also provide cover for those that are there to do physical battle. That's important too. So again, over and over, Twitter is used by far left violent extremists to incite violence, to organize violence, and also to give tips on how to commit criminality here. He also wrote here a speculative fiction. cops kill people. So what if people kill back? Cops might be the ones looking over their shoulders instead. Yeah, so he's involved with Crime Think, by the way. His account was also suspended, by the way. So there's been this ongoing thread now for more than a week where I've just been adding on to it, responding. And you can see more. So let me pull this up. Mm. Yeah, I brought attention also to, well, here's the thing. So when Antifa are being shut down for the violence, how they respond is to advocate for more violence against their targets. So I reported out last week, as revenge for Elon Musk suspending violent extremist accounts on Twitter, Antifa in Portland are organizing arson attacks in Tesla locations tonight. So this is one of the main Antifa accounts in Portland, Ash Redacted, which has since been suspended. But he wrote, tonight in Portland, every night, every town, show up at your local Tesla dealerships in protest of Elon Musk. There's a flyer. The fascist Elon Musk has chosen his side in history with fascists. And there's a picture of a Tesla that's been set on fire and is destroyed. So yeah, it's incitement to arson attack. And then this account listed all these addresses. So I'm bringing attention to all of these and how it's done day in and day out, every hour. And the response from left-wing media, as you would expect, is to demonize me and to sympathize with the far-left accounts, which none of us should be surprised. Much of the left-wing press is part of Antifa and are allied with them and share the same political targets. So no surprise, you know. They described me, for example, as a far-right extremist, far-right provocateur, and that these accounts that I just talked about as being cultural publications, cultural anarchist publications is one. Another was these are journalist accounts. So excuse me. Okay. Um, so in addition to some of those that have been banned, that I just talked about, I'm gonna bring some attention to some specific accounts that were suspended. Oh, and I wanted to clear something up. There's no, I'm just listing usernames and then they're getting automatically suspended by Elon Musk. It doesn't work like that, actually. I have no idea what's happening internally with Twitter. I mean, how I've been very transparent with my communications with Elon, right? They're public. He's tagged. You see what I say. You see what he says. Most of the time, he's not responding. He responded, I think, 2 times, which I read earlier, very briefly. I bring specific attention to these tweets and how the accounts are using that platform in violation of the policies to organize violence and to incite violence. And so maybe those various tweets were reviewed and reported and found to be in violation, leading to the suspension. So it's not just me snapping my fingers and accounts are going away. It doesn't work like that. And that's not my goal anyways. My goal is to see that the platform has an equal application of its policies. That's critical for the social media platform to adhere to the principles of the First Amendment, for example, which was a big thing for Elon in motivating him buying the platform. Another is it's about actually showing everyone that they can have confidence in the platform, that it's not just going to be a place where only one side is censored and the other can call for death, call for violence, praise terrorists with impunity, as they've been doing. And I think also people are kind of overstating the number of accounts that have been banned. Really, it's not that much considering how many thousands of them are out there and play a role in inciting far left violent extremism. Some Antifa influencers, I think that's what I'll call them, have now been suspended. One that is of particular note is Chad Loader, who I've talked about before and reported on quite extensively. So Chad Loder is a Los Angeles Antifa member. He comes from a tech background. I don't think he works anymore. He sold off his company, made a lot of money, and as far as I know, was a full-time Twitter Antifa activist. What was really interesting, though, is that you see in this tweet, in response to uh, this Ramsey Paul writing Twitter's reportedly nuking pedo accounts, this is eliminating much of Antifa Twitter. He took a screenshot that Elon had liked that tweet, and he wrote, Chad Loder wrote, back up and archive your Twitter ASAP. So he was quite freaking out over that. Um, and, he did end up getting suspended, um, apparently for band evasion and other offenses. He has had numerous tweets removed for posting private information about people. And I've documented in my own reporting, which I'll pull up in a sec, where he's called for deadly violence against his political targets. He uses Twitter to lie really with impunity, and he uses these auto blocking scripts where, for example, when he targets me, everybody who is following me he automatically bans them using the script. So that means if you go to any of his posts, only his lies would be out there, and any countering information wouldn't even make it through automatically. So that's how he uses. That's what he uses to create like an echo chamber and to spread lies. Um, and here's a photo of him. Um, yeah, his account also had a lot of weird sexual stuff. He was in, like these older posts, talking about him being an involuntary celibate here and being quite distressed about it. Um, that was the least of the issues with Loader. Um, Here was this other account that had been suspended a long time ago, Math for Docs. Let me pull up my report about him so you can see what I wrote in my news report. So a number of leftist women had accused him in the past of predatory behavior. And I think because of his very large following on Twitter at the time, that he was um, not held to account by the community, which is pretty common. I mean, Antifa do accept a lot of predators in their community as long as they're useful. So if you look through his old tweet history at that time, he um, expressed a sexual interest in a lot of various women and apparently crossed the line several times. So one wrote, women should be able to participate in activist communities without dealing with creepy dudes. I only followed Chad Loder because I thought he would be a useful comrade. I'm angry. So there was some back and forth between him and this woman that led her to say that. And there was this other prominent leftist account, Hacking But Legal, wrote, I retract my support for this individual, and this referring to Chad Loder. Um, yeah, he incites a lot of violence. For example, this bloodied preacher who was hit in the head and has blood gushing out. This was in LA at one of the We Spa riots, which was the case where a transgender sex offender allegedly exposed an erect penis to women and girls in the women's section. Uh, Chad Loder and Antifa had defended that individual and came out for direct actions in support of that person. So Chad Loder wrote no hate rallies in LA. He used this punch emoji, get the F out. He posted that picture. Here he wrote behead them all. In responding to somebody that wrote supporting criminals, I see, he wrote, you're goddamn right I am. And then he wrote down all these names of uh, Antifa people who have died. One of them was Willem van Spronsen, the domestic tourist that I was just talking about. He wrote, no memorial, but attack. Here he was instructing people how to blow up cars. Molotovs should be thrown under the vehicle. And then here, he wrote, "Oh, they listen to me." So, and he also wrote, "These lasers are pretty effective." That's referring to the lasers that we use to damage the eyes of law enforcement officers. Um, so, a very unhinged extremist individual with a history of predatory behavior and incitement to violence. He's off Twitter. And of course, his supporters and comrades are really angry about it and have been threatening me for days on end over that. They blame me for Chad Loder's suspension rather than blaming Chad Loder's own actions on Twitter. Another person that has been suspended is Vishal Singh, who's described as a journalist in left-wing press in LA. So Vishal fashions himself as some journalist, but like, these are some of his recent tweets, by the way, just from the month of November. Um, so he was suspended, but this is what he wrote. I've had it. I've effing had it. The anti-LGBTQ hate in this country has gone too far. Liberals who appease transphobes have gone too far. We're done. We're fighting back. It will be militant. You will not genocide us into the night. You want a war? You got it. Here he wrote on his Instagram, which, as far as I know, he was recently suspended on that too for repeated violations of Instagram's policies. You Republican efforts want a war? You effing got one. LGBTQ plus people will not go quietly into the night. F this, it's over, we're at war, I've had enough. I warn cisgender and straight people about the incoming genocide daily, and none of y'all effing listen. Whatever, you're no ally if you're silent now. This is wartime. We will not surrender. So lots of calls to armed, deadly conflict. Um, and then he also repeatedly targeted libs of TikTok. So here he wrote to her, "Shut the F up, you terrorist Nazi effer. You will live in fear for the rest of your wretched days." Another one last thing, and he tagged the other account of libs of TikTok. Chaya Rajik 10 should live in fear for the rest of her days. It's only fair. Put the phobia in her transphobia. So yeah, he threatens other people like a terrorist, actually. You should live the rest of your days in fear. You want a war? You got it. Repeated references to genocide and all that. And apparently, all this was sparked because of his inability to control his reactions after the Colorado gay club mass shooting. Um, of course, as we quickly learned, the suspect there, in which 5 people were killed, the shooting was ended by a heterosexual veteran, by the way, who was attending a drag event with his wife and daughter. Um, we find out that the suspect there is a trans non-binary person. And the response from the trans militants online and the left is to say this person's not really trans, it's just so he's to get out of hate charges. I don't really see how that's a legal strategy because he's being this individual who uses they them pronouns, by the way, has been charged with multiple murder charges, and it doesn't really make a difference if a hate crime enhancement is not applied. So yeah, the left set up the rules that you cannot question how somebody identifies, and if you do, you're transphobic and misgendering. You should be canceled. You should be censored. You should be banned off social media. And they were doing it day in and day out in reaction to this individual who they don't accept is one of them conveniently, despite how that individual identifies. Um, yeah. So Vishal Singh off Twitter. Another account that is off Twitter that I've reported about is this Portland Antifa account called We Strike Back 161. 161 is the numeric rendering of AFA, which is anti-fascist action. Anytime you see AFA 161 on Twitter accounts, that means that they are connected to Antifa, and it's their dog whistle. And you also see it in their graffiti quite often, in addition to their various symbols like the flags, the black and red flag, the three arrows, 161. Any of that stuff is the symbols of the Antifa gang movement. So this account posted targets in Portland, Oregon for comrades to smash up. So here, using the emoji of the brick and the breaking, posted a picture of a Walgreens on 82nd Avenue that was accused of not allowing some homeless person to sit on the property. This account posted a photo of a business in Portland, an Inn in Jade, and in all the comments, they wrote F around, find out. So it's about, yeah, this account was used to place literally an actual literal target on various businesses by posting their address and photos of where they are and these various hints about smashing it up, destroying it, which Antifa make good on those promises. Another account that's been banned, although is evading that ban, is the Denton, Texas chapter of the John Brown Gun Club. Now, I've talked about this group a lot. They have gotten a lot of attention for being it's an armed militia, an armed Antifa militia that goes to these drag events to intimidate people with guns outside. They have made a backup account. It was EFJBGC2, which is Elm Fork John Brown Gun Club 2, but they changed it to Elm Fork JB GC. So they have a second account right now that they're evading the ban on. Yeah, so they were suspended for incitement of violence. Their members are very extreme, violent extremists. Christopher Gillow is one of the leaders of the group. This is him. He's tried to scrub his photos from the internet. Another member is this person here, Garrett Lee. He ran this account where he was threatening people. He wrote, "It is your civic duty to punch a Nazi, even if that Nazi will cry about it. For legal reasons, this is a direct threat. Enjoy your kneecaps while you still got him." And he was targeting a young woman named Kelly Neidert in Texas, this conservative student organizer at the time, who is now graduated. These are more pictures of Garrett Lee, which he also has worked to scrub from the internet. So their account, though the main one was banned, they opened up another one, still online as we speak. I'm gonna pull up their alt one so you can see how they're evading the ban. Here we go. So this is the current handle of the alternate account for the John Brown Gun Club. They have 15,000 followers, so it's significant. They spread hoaxes as well, like they did about the Colorado shooting. Let me pull that up. So they wrote, "The shooter was NB, non-binary. No. Anyways." And then they posted a screenshot, Anderson Lee Eldridge. That was the username, which is just the name of the suspect in the Colorado Springs gay club shooting. There's a Bible verse, there's an America flag emoji. The law of the Lord is perfect. And there's only one picture with a pride flag burning. This is a completely fake account. So this is a hoax that they posted. You know, when you wrote burning pride flag on Google, that's the first thing that's on. And this got more than 6,000 likes and almost 1,000 retweets, probably more than that. And it's a lie. It's a hoax. It's a fake account. And look at this thing. If you can see one post. So there's, they I mean, that's the thing with Antifa. They often don't really care about the facts as long as it radicalizes people. The goal is to radicalize people into violence. That's what they want. That's what they need, actually. Um, on some other news, it's not just about Antifa accounts on social media being held um, to account for violating terms of service. Some of them now have been convicted. So a big case in Portland last week, or 2 weeks ago actually, involved Daryl Anthony Kimberlin. So he is a extremely violent and dangerous Antifa member who pleaded guilty to felony riot and second-degree criminal mischief. So he had smashed up the headquarters of the Oregon Democrats on Inauguration Day last year. If you, for background, you might remember there were pictures of Antifa holding up the banner, "We don't want Biden, we want revenge." And then they marched to the headquarters of the Oregon Democrats in Portland, Oregon, and smashed it up, destroyed it. Oregon Democrats did not call out Antifa for that violent destruction, instead blamed the right, Republicans. Um, Daryl Kimberlin, identified as a journalist. This was his social media, Gonzo journalist, he, him. And you see these Antifa symbols on there, by the way. If you look closely at the symbol on the left, so there's a hammer and sickle, right, which is and the communist symbol. But within there, it's been modified with an addition of these other things where you can see an A. So this is the Antifa ideology. It's this combination emerging of anarchy and communism. Hence, red for communism, black for anarchy. That's why they picked those colors. Um, so this was the press release from the district attorney's office in Sonoma County. So his restitution is about $50,000. And what he's been, and this is some of his old tweets, by the way. Shout out to the people who shot at cops tonight and got away. So, he used Twitter to celebrate violent attacks, which is a violation of Twitter's policies, by the way. He celebrated because he was in and out of jail a lot at the riots. He was arrested multiple times. He has another photo, Daryl Kimberlin. Yeah, and this picture on the left here was during that riot at the Oregon Democrats headquarters, and he's probably in this photograph actually. And here's the video that Julio Rosas recorded of the attack. Yeah, so there were a number of journalists there from Legacy Media because it was a very large direct action on Inauguration Day, and they didn't bother recording that video. This was recorded by the extremely brave Julio Rosas, who is at townhall.com. Follow him, by the way. He did this undercover at much danger to his life. So you see, they just smashed up the Oregon Democrats, and then they started a fire on the street. In response to it, him having to pay now $50,000 in restitution, his girlfriend, who is Kimberly Burley, who I've reported about before, is behind a GoFundMe to raise $45,000 here. Emergency Legal Fund, KB, which is Kennedy Burley. She's key to a lot of the militant Antifa organizing in Portland and one of the main players. And they're together. Both of them have some trans, non-binary identity, but it's a heterosexual couple. That's reality of it is they're the two white people, straight white people who are rioting and breaking stuff and need some type of grievance, so they take on another identity. Um, GoFundMe does say that it doesn't allow the fundraising for the legal aid of criminal suspects. Well, he's not a criminal suspect anymore. He actually pleaded guilty. So this is like an even clearer violation of the GoFundMe. But the first one was shut down. This one, so they created two. Kennedy Burley here, restitution fund for PDX comrade. This memorial, by the way, is in the park right outside the Justice Center, and it's also the one where they wrote "Kill Andy Ngo" earlier this year. So this one was shut down by GoFundMe, and then so they opened this one, which is still online as we speak. Kennedy Burley, I wrote about her before. This is her picture here. She's a pornographer who also was behind a child grooming event that I uncovered and reported about. She was organizing this event where there were a group of people who make porn, inviting trans children to come for a makeover where they would be changing clothes and have access to young children for a photo shoot. Um, and so the event didn't happen in public, it was canceled or was held in private. Hopefully not held in private, hopefully it was canceled completely, but the public one at least didn't take place. Um, and Yep, so that was my reporting a while back. You can look it up on Post Millennial. Porn maker exposes organizer of Portland Antifa children's photo shoot. Um, and there's still some more developments about it. So Kennedy Burley, she's using this account here, me off something. She's evading a permanent ban. Her other account was Fresh Haterade, and she just keeps making Twitter accounts over and over. She's threatening me again. Um, Finally got a couple report from Milkshake, LMAO. Milkshake's referring to me. That's the nickname they've given to describe how after they beat me in 2019 on the head, causing brain bleeding, that they threw the shakes on me to blind me so I couldn't see and leave. I'm still being called a groomer, she wrote. I swear to God, I'm gonna make him regret effing with me. That's Kennedy Burley there. Um, and then Kennedy Burley announced on their website, fandingo.com, that they're doing now as a third fundraiser for Daryl Kimberlin using Stripe as the payment processor. And Stripe, by the way, does not allow fundraising for violent extremist causes either. But it's still up. Yeah, so that's their GoFundMe. And this is the Stripe donation form from their website, fandingo.com. And Daryl Kimberlin is using an alternate Twitter account. He probably has several. Let's see. Brain. So yeah, the name. So he posted a picture of me. This is Daryl Kimberlin's Twitter. The username is Milkshake Me Face. Brain hemorrhage is the name above that. And this is a picture of me when I was hiding in the hotel last year after they had beaten me. And he was there that night, by the way. I saw him. So he wrote, he came off lock for this ending up, but came off lock. He had the account locked and privated, and he went public. And he wrote, please help me fundraise to pay restitution. I owe over 49,000 for 2 protests. I would like to pay it within 9 months to reduce my felony to misdemeanor. So, it's lying. It wasn't a protest. Like, destroying businesses and properties and going after people for political violent extremism, it's not a protest. Um, Daryl Kimberlin is not the only Antifa militant who's been convicted recently. There's been another one who also identified as a journalist, by the way. Let me see. Let me pull it up for you. Okay, here we go. So this is in New York. This is Alexander Stokes Contompasses. This was him at the trial. He was convicted by a jury uh, and and sentenced on the 17th of November this year to 20 years in prison for trying to kill two Proud Boys in a stabbing attack at an Antifa riot. So, in all the press reporting about him, none of it mentions that he was a member of Antifa. But this is his old social media, which I documented a long time ago and reported on. So he had an Antifa flag within his own home. Um, it's really similar to how jihadists who are sympathizers to ISIS, for example, will have the flag of ISIS in their home or on their phones, things like that. You can look at it really the same way. Um, I'm going to read some comments from the judge. So, acting Supreme Court Justice Roger McDonald told the 39-year-old that he can only conclude that the defendant went to the Capitol ready, willing, and able to inflict violence on political opponents. So this was the New York State Capitol, by the way. Quote, that's exactly what the defendant did. He violently, brutally stabbed political opponents of his, one of whom he eviscerated, McDonald said, as Tompkins sat next to his defense attorney. This wasn't just a simple stab or an accidental stab or poke, as the defendant attempted to describe in his testimony. These were violent knife attacks. McDonald rejected Contompas's claims that he had gone to the Capitol as an independent journalist to document the riot. Here's another post of him from his Twitter. 10 years ago, if you told me I was going to be part of an underground anarchist network of mass Avengers called Antifa, work with skinheads to fight white supremacists, blah, 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 I would have absolutely no idea who that you were talking about. So yeah, he's talking about being part of an underground network of Antifa, clearly. And over, we still hear the lie that organized Antifa doesn't exist, in spite of all the evidence in front of us. This was the press release about the guilty verdict of his state capitol stabbing case. So yeah, he got 20 years. This is also from his social media, I am Antifa, which are the chilling words of also Willem van Sponsen, by the way, and also the gunman, the Antifa gunman in Portland in 2020 who killed a Trump supporter. He wrote, I am 100% Antifa. All echoes of that. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna play the interview that I did on Newsmax about the Tesla, the threats against Tesla by Antifa in response to Elon Musk or those under him suspending some of these violent extremist accounts.
And so, following these accounts being purged, you noted, Andy, you said that Antifa set out to burn down Tesla dealerships in the Portland area to get back at Elon Musk. You just identified the alleged arsonist, Michael Paul Hargett, on your no-go zone website. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so last Friday, there was about a 5-hour standoff in Linwood, Washington State, which is pretty close to Seattle. Just hours before, Antifa Online had published the address of Tesla properties across the country and had urged or suggested arson attacks against them. It remains to be seen if the suspect had an ideological motive, but what happened is he allegedly threatened police with a crowbar, barricaded himself in a building right next to the Tesla facility, started a fire, and moved allegedly propane tanks and other things that could explode into the area, and threatened to blow up, to carry out a bombing attack. He was eventually, after 5 hours, the SWAT unit broke in using a robot and was able to arrest him. And I was able to publish his photo from his first court hearing today, where bail remains at $50,000 US. He's still in jail at the moment. Yeah, so this got really no attention on the mainstream media. You know why? I'm gonna pull up my article that I wrote on my locals, which you should subscribe to at ngo.locals.com because you can see a lot of original reporting on there. It's kind of like a Substack for me. Um, this is my report. Man accused of threatening to bomb area next to Washington State. Tesla store identified. So investigators have not said if there is or was an ideological motive for the attempted bombing and in that arson attack. However, the incident did come hours after Antifa had posted the addresses of Tesla locations online and were calling for attacks on them. So yeah, I talked about that earlier from this account, this Ash redacted the flyer, the addresses. And this is, I was the first to report out the photographs of the suspects. So the picture on the right was from his first court hearing, in which prosecutors asked for the bail to be increased from 50,000 to 100,000, and the judge declined that. So it remains at 50,000. And as far as I know, the suspect is still in jail. He has not been bailed out yet. Um, These are some other pictures of him. The suspect's name is Michael Paul Hoggett, by the way. Let me pull up he he's charged with felony second-degree assault, felony second-degree arson, felony first-degree malicious mischief of business, felony theft of a motor vehicle, and misdemeanor obstruction of a law enforcement officer. Another picture of Hoggett here. Um, And Antifa praised that attack, by the way. This account, Redwood PDX, which has been suspended, is praised the attack by writing, "Someone in Linwood, Washington went to the Tesla service center last night and allegedly set it on fire, only after allegedly threatening the pigs with the crowbar and getting tased. They had to call in SWAT. Effing legend," and then fire emoji. In this account, by the way, I've looked at quite a bit before as an Antifa member in Portland. That's the symbol of Rose City Antifa on the right. Yeah, so you can read that reporting on my locals. Okay. And lastly, I'm gonna play. I did a lot of interviews this past week, and it's great that I get to talk about kind of the more substantive things about how Antifa organize, because sometimes I'm asked more broadly about some tangential issues, but this past week in all my interviews, I really got to hit hard on Twitter being the kind of like the groundwork for the ecosystem of American Antifa to organize. And here's an interview I did with Brandy Cruz. She was formerly with Fox 13 Seattle. Does great work. She's completely independent now. So follow her on Twitter at Brandy Cruz, and I'm gonna play the video interview.
I was really shocked that he did acknowledge finally something that I've been trying to raise attention to those who are higher up at Twitter, that that platform is the primary platform that are used by far left violent extremists to organize, promote violence, and then to raise funds for um, criminal suspects if they happen to be arrested and face, a prosecution process. I'm just trying my best to show that there are numerous accounts that have for years been able to get away with incitement to violence and calls for murder. And here's the proof, here's the evidence.
How worried are you, though, that this is going to put even more of a target on your back? And is it already? What have you seen or heard since this exchange with Elon happened?
Yes, of course I'm worried. Anytime that my name is trending on Twitter, it usually corresponds with threats on my life or those around me. I have received the threat already, and it referenced specifically the brief communication with Elon and also my tweets about Antifa. And I have referred that to law enforcement. It's something I think about every day just because I have paid a very, very heavy price for the beat that I've chosen to focus on. And sometimes it feels actually very isolating too, because I mean, for years, I was um, trying to bring attention to all the ways that these accounts organize on Twitter, and I was, ignored essentially. Now that, you know, I got the attention of someone high up, it feels in some ways a little bit vindicating because I have like a lot of evidence that I've already posted on the past. So it's very easy for me to bring up these old posts again to show. Um, but of course, I'm scared as well.